Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to box number 4. And today's special guest is a lovely young man by the name of Mr. Tom Walsh. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce him because I've known him for probably the best part of 15 years. He's one of the greatest trumpet players in the whole of the world. He records in Hollywood, in Germany for the WDR band, and is generally one of the nicest guys in music. And my memories of Tom are everything to do with positivity. He's great at what he does, and he's also a super great guy. So thanks very much for joining us today, Tom.
I don't know who that guy you described is, but that's very kind. Yeah. How you doing, mate?
Tom's joining us from London in what looks like a rather small practice room.
This is now the recording / practice den cesspit scenario. It's very superheated today, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I really can. Well, I mean, not everybody knows who you are, Tom, because we've not had a chance to introduce you as one of our guests with the band for a while. If you feel like it, could you give them a quick update on how you've got to where you are today?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think the first thing I should say is, yeah, John is right. He was one of my first ever musical mentors when I was about 14, 15, maybe even younger. John was doing some additional teaching. Hot House was operating back then, but this was down in Essex because I'm from Essex. But John was one of the first jazz educators I ever met, and kind of was massively responsible for getting me into the love of big band music, essentially, which was, I guess it was that kind of way. Big band and jazz was kind of my way into the music industry, or to studying it. Certainly, it kind of changed my life around, really.
It was cool, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, it was fantastic. So I kind of went to my county youth jazz orchestra, which is what John was teaching as part of, and from then on went to play in Nijo in London, which is still going, and went to study at the Royal Academy of Music on a jazz degree, which was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And ever since then, just been based around London. I guess I've been living here for about 10 or 12 years now. Something like, between 10 or 11 years, I think, yeah.
That's incredible, man. And once you were doing your A-levels, did you go down to the Junior Jazz Academy at the Royal Academy? Do I remember that right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And again, lots of other Hot House alumni have been down that exact same route. So it's funny how you can meet. I mean, London's obviously an amazing melting pot for music, but you meet people from all over the country. And the Junior Academy Jazz course was fantastic as well, like a little Saturday morning program. And probably in my year before auditioning for music college, I had like a 6-hour day of musical, big band in the morning, then small group jazz in the afternoons on the Saturday for a year, which was, it was great without realizing at the time. You just absorb it. You try to absorb it as much as you can, like a sponge. But yeah, really, really fun time.
And did you feel that the Junior Jazz, I mean, there's a bit of a shout out here to Ben Masterson, who just found out that he's been offered a place at the Junior Jazz Academy. So well done, Ben. Super pleased with that one. You've got a big tradition to live up to here, so make sure you start putting practice in. But did you find it helped you get into the Royal Academy? And then who were your tutors through the Royal Academy days?
So, it was a really kind of direct pathway into there. And I mean, I think that because I'd done the Junior Academy, by all means, it wasn't a shoe-in to the actual degree course. It still meant that kind of I had to make sure that I was practicing and at the level, because I think in my particular year, there was a lot of talent on my instrument that was kind of all assembling for all of the same jazz courses. So it was quite a hotbed of kind of activity under the surface, under the radar, that I didn't really know about. But certainly it was the same sort of teachers. So the head of jazz at the Royal Academy of Music is a trumpet player called Nick Smart. And he was actually at the time taking the Junior Academy course. So again, I think I've known Nick as long as I have John. In fact, I believe it was Nick Smart, who's now the head of jazz at the Academy, was depping for one of John's classes. He was like the substitute teacher, if you will. And it's kind of it's been a bit of a small world, and it's kind of all come around full circle to I'm now a professor at the Academy. So it's kind of like a strange kind of cyclical thing, all within the space of probably like a decade and a half or something.
Oh, that's incredible, man. You know, just because they've got loads of people who want to know this, what sort of things have you done since leaving the Royal Academy? You know, what are going to be the highlights, the big jobs? I mean, I know WDR was huge, but I mean, for the kids, what sort of things have you done? You know, just reel them off.
I was trying to think about this earlier, but in terms of kind of like big band kind of work, I mean,
Well, any trumpet work.
yeah. Well, I mean, this kind of this sounds horrible, like you're reeling off a list of people, but the situations always change. But lots of studio and recording work. So some of the recent highlights in the last year or so, did like a gig about 18 months ago with Michael Bublé at the O2. That was quite amazing, playing with his big band. Quincy Jones a couple of years ago. Been to LA and recorded with like the same horn section that were on the Michael Jackson records, Earth, Wind and Fire records. Apart from that, oh yeah, I shouldn't be. Everyone keep this under your hat, but because it's not come out yet, it was meant to have come out. But I'm playing trumpet on the new James Bond film that will be coming out at some point. Well, whenever. But yeah, that's kind of like it's been a bit of a whirlwind of a year. But yeah, those, you know, it takes you on. You know, from someone that was practicing their licks at age 16, it's just you don't know what's necessarily going to happen. It's
it's so true, though, isn't it? I mean, but from my point of view, when we have education cracking off, we're trying to get the kids and the young people to do more than just, you know, practice. It's go and play lots of gigs, you know, take on little part-time, you know, playing work, so they get used to the environment of being like a portfolio musician. You have lots of different people, you know, doing a little bit with somebody. It's not just one gig. It's not like an orchestra, for example, where you might be the principal trumpet player for the CBSO and that's the mainstay. We have quite a lot of people who pay us, don't we, as who are employers to play. How did that work when you came out of the Royal Academy? Were you already, you know, by the end of year 3, were you already, you know, working pretty much full time?
I was starting to get professional work kind of at the beginning of college, I guess. But for me, it was an amazing opportunity because you suddenly realize that all of your professors at that sort of level, doesn't matter which college you go to, you're going to bump into them on professional work eventually. And so is kind of, I guess you could take this as a little bit of my 10 cents worth of advice, but you're kind of developing your professional reputation from the day you set foot into college, because these are the people that you'll see and work with for the rest of your life. So some of the professors were super kind. They gave me a chance to play with their ensembles and their big bands, for instance. And then from then on, it was kind of, I was a bit more commercially leaning, I guess, than just wanting to be a jazz soloist. I had a lot of different interests apart from playing small group jazz. So I was really into pop music. I loved arranging. I loved working in big bands, and I always admired the sound of film trumpet players and things like that. So I guess, yeah, like you said, it's kind of, you try and diversify without realizing it. You just follow the music that you love, I guess.
And, you know, you just said there that you love arranging, and, you know, those people who work in in music, we know that you're a ridiculous arranger. And there are other things that you can do, aren't there, apart from just playing a gig, you know, the recording sessions, the arranging, you know, the mentoring. What sort of things are you working on at the moment with your arranging?
Well, weirdly, since the lockdown, it was one of those sort of things, literally the day that the lockdown came, I kind of had a bit of a head start because I was out in Denmark leading a big band that I'd done all the arrangements for. And I got sent home about 7 days. Actually, no, it was 10 days before the UK lockdown. I was over in Denmark, and it was a day away from doing the gig. And we'd done 3 days of rehearsal with this big band. And then they said, that's it, the country's shutting down, we're off. So that was probably my biggest arranging project to date, and it didn't quite happen. I think it would have been rescheduled, but it was so close. And that was about it was about a month of just sitting in front of a keyboard like a mad professor. But yeah, so I don't know, it's kind of, and then since then I've just been doing a lot of, everyone's making the transition like you're doing right now. It's to online teaching and trying to kind of make the best out of a bad situation for everyone. So lots of kind of home recording, arranging projects, and, you know, just generally trying to keep busy, I guess, the same as everyone.
Yeah, it's quite interesting when you say that, you know, you were that close to doing the big gig. You know, we've all had little things that we've had to overcome in life, you know, whether it's nerves in a performance or, you know, your instrument breaks. have there been any times where you've had, something really tough come at you and you've picked up a particular lesson in life, something that you've, carry with you?
Well, I think kind of when the nerves have always hit for me, it's always been one of those things that you have to, it's very hard to counteract adrenaline in any situation. And that could be from fear of a solo, or I guess the one thing you could try and kind of fall back on is hopefully you've done enough preparation of whatever material you're playing to kind of even your worst version to yourself would actually be very, like, a very high level for anyone else. So it's kind of, sometimes it is best to just kind of take a step back, follow your instincts, don't try and force anything. I think kind of certainly, well, with any blowing instrument or any instrument really, it's kind of as soon as your technique starts seizing up, you've got to try and go back to the kind of the base fundamentals and just try and, I don't know, just try and kind of, well, it's not much good to say, just relax, just you'll be fine. But it comes from experience, and you start to realize that it's just a game of kind of, it's like being a golfer or something like that. You might have, eventually your percentage rate, your success rate, I guess, like of putts or something like that would go up. But just the more time you spend doing it, the more you'll feel familiar in all of those little scenarios, I think.
I think that's a really crucial thing. When something's new, it might seem really different and strange, but the more times you do it, the more used to it you become, and you're not spooked by the environment, which is really cool.
Which is why, right, you saying, just to follow on from what you were saying, John, it's great that you're kind of encouraging everyone to be out and about and doing little gigs. And, that's exactly how I try to do it, busking on a high street or playing in a pub, in a jam session or something. It's all really useful, definitely.
It totally is. And, we've had a couple of questions come in, which are from, we've had one from Tessa and one from Ali. And these are quite nice questions. I'll get to some of the technical ones later. But, there is a real thing that we've got about equality in music and equality in our groups. We tried really, really hard to make it a 50-50 male-female balanced ensemble. And if you're not careful, when you're looking at things on YouTube, it looks very male orientated. And I think Tessa's very, quite astutely put, what sort of opportunities are there out there for a female trumpet player, female musician? I mean, you and I know quite a lot, Georgina, and all that sort of stuff. But visibly, it doesn't look like it's an environment that there are many females in. What's your take on that?
Well, I can give you a personal story immediately, which is when I was saying earlier about getting into music college. I can let you know this, and this might be heartening. I actually got the reserve place at most of the colleges I applied for because there was a really standout jazz soloist trumpet player called Laura Jerd, who was she's my age, so she was applying at the same time. So she wiped the board. She was at that high level where she was getting scholarship offers from all of the colleges. I think kind of, I don't know, it might just be a natural inclination, but I don't think it's necessarily a discrimination thing. And Laura's gone on to do all sorts of amazing stuff. She's kind of, we played together in Nijo in the same section, and she went to one London Music College, I went to another, and she's decided to go off on a different path. She kind of wasn't necessarily wanting to be in big bands or playing lead trumpet or anything like that, but she's won, I think she might have won it, but she was certainly nominated for a Mercury Prize for one of her jazz albums. And she's my age, she's 28. So it's kind of, she's someone off the top of my head that I can just think of that was like I grew up around her. So it was never ever really, didn't ever feel like it was a discriminatory thing, because Nijo, I guess if you think of it as the national collective level, she was part of the trumpet section. And it's kind of, we had a fantastic female vocalist in our year at the academy, which was seen as the most select jazz group. And I think that was the first female vocalist of any kind that they'd taken for at least 10 years or something. So I think it's, Alex Ridout is an amazing young jazz trumpet player. She's off in America taking a gap year, but she's at the academy. And every time I hear her play, it's kind of, you just think, whoa, it's crazy. It's, you've got lots of role models to be looking up to, especially, I've heard of Liesl Whitaker, Bria Skonberg. One of my absolute all-time favorite jazz trumpet players is Ingrid Jensen. It's kind of like this. It might well seem like it's kind of like a male-dominated thing, but I think the old era of British bulldog trumpet, macho trumpet guys, I think that kind of era certainly has died out, especially as the older generation now have kind of, they're not retired necessarily, but they're kind of like phasing out of certain areas of the work, like sessions and stuff.
There's definitely not a barrier to entry, is there? For
No, not at all.
And from my experience, that's been completely opposite. It's just, we're talking about institutionalized from 50 years ago, aren't we? With the guys who were only doing that because it was a different type of job. But nowadays, there's more and more equality coming into it, and I think it's an enjoyable and viable career career path for both boys and girls. If I'm being honest, if nowadays you need to have this concept of a portfolio career. It's not just one job. Whatever you go into, whether it's graphic design, you have lots of different people who are giving you work. Whether it's marketing and digital marketing, you have lots of different clients and customers. So, music's the same as any of those other jobs, except that the level of reward, if you enjoy it, is so much higher, because of that creativity part of it. Alison Masterson also posted in there, how important do you think it is to be able to play a bit of piano?
I'm probably not the one to talk to about that. I mean, I do play. It's kind of, I would probably fail every single entrance exam for anything. It was the fingering that got me, but I have to say, like, I do play, especially when arranging for larger ensembles, even if it is something as simple as, playing out nice sounding chords. That's kind of where I operate on piano. And it's kind of one of those things, as long as you can kind of, a golden rule for any type of writing really is if it's going to sound, if a voicing sounds nice and rich on a piano, it's probably going to sound really great played by instruments as well. So I use the piano as a tool, and unfortunately, like a lot of tools, I just hack away at it. So it's no one will want to hear me on it professionally, but it's really handy to have a more, especially for like a horn player, it's really nice to have a visual representation of all the harmony laid out in front of you, and it definitely changes the way that I've approached the instrument, certainly.
Yeah, I think that as well. I think it's a vital instrument to be just aware of how chords are all built together and how the structure of harmony and melody all works. So I think it's worthwhile doing. So Alison, if you're listening, you probably need to tell Ben he has to do half an hour piano practice every day.
That's the official answer.
To get into the Royal Academy. Got a nice, interesting question from George. George is a budding trumpet player who's going to be absolutely killer. He's a bit like you when the same sort of age. And he works hard, a great character. But he's super keen on knowing what instrument you play, what trumpet, what mouthpiece, and how much do you get on with Wayne Bergeron?
I've got to say, it's a strange scenario. Again, like, I think my first ever classes with John in those, like, kind of, we were playing along to Gordon Goodwin tracks that were really, fresh off the press at that point. That all those records and everything, they'd just come out, and Wayne was my hero of all time. And then, just strangely enough, as weird as it sounds, I guess I can call him like a friend. The first time I visited LA, he picked me up from LAX airport, and he had like a little iPhone banner that was strolling across waiting saying trumpet geeks, just kind of like me and Louis Dowdeswell and a couple others. So yeah, Wayne is one of the nicest people in the industry, and just really a real champion of young talent. And in terms of gear, actually, funny enough, I play his mouthpiece. I've kind of, his GR mouthpiece. In fact, I think I picked it up when I watched a gig of his in London in 2012, and they're very well made because I've been playing the same mouthpiece for 8 years, over 8 years or something now. So yeah, the GR Bergeron Studio is what I play, and then I just play a Bach 37 trumpet, which is basically the most bog standard professional model trumpet. It's been a bit of a journey to get there, but but I really like playing them, and I think they've got quite a unique sound. The Bach middle register on a trumpet, I think, is quite a special thing. So I've been on the same setup for a little while. I'm not really a massive equipment geek, although when John knew me, I think I was probably a little bit more obsessive with that.
Yeah, me too, mate. Me too. I'm sure if everybody types into the chat box right now that they want to hear Tom play something on his trumpet, maybe James Bondlick, he might be able to do that in a short while. But
I'll
leave that for everybody to write in there. Honestly, my favourite part is what's been your best memory of music up to date? Is it always the last one? Is it the James Bond? Is it just what is that one thing? Have you got that one thing where you thought, I love this?
I guess I think a lot of the kind of career highlights that happened, you get so focused with him that you only really look back with fondness afterwards. I guess like you said, the adrenaline counteracting that can be a difficult thing. I'm not saying it feels as calculated as performing a job, but you want to be at your best when you're in these environments. So you just kind of like, you brought up just by saying that a couple of other. I did a gig with Bobby Shew at Ronnie Scott's with a big band. It was just kind of, I felt like I was going to miss every single entry because I was just listening to him out front. But of course, you're kind of at the back of the trumpet section, kind of trying to kind of, do the music justice as well. And then we did a series of gigs with Al Jarreau as well, which is paying tribute to Jerry Hay, who's my all-time hero. I don't know. Yeah, you have to kind of stop and pinch yourself along the way. But yeah, I do try and. I'm always looking for the next thrill, if that makes sense. There's not really, it's kind of difficult. There's not really time to kind of sit and kind of rest on your laurels. It just feels like you're looking for the next thrill in music. But yeah, certainly it's amazing to look back, especially when you suddenly get to call heroes friends, and then you realize that they're actually normal human beings. They're kind of, and everyone's heard that phrase, never meet your heroes. I've not really had those experiences for the most part. Everyone that I've ever met all of my heroes have been super generous with their time. As long as you're asking intelligent questions and you're wanting to learn from them, and you ask the right questions in the right way, they can become, mentors and friends,
Yeah, and that applies across all industries. Surround yourself with the right sort of people, the people who are going to be positive towards you and encourage you. In the world, there's all sorts of people, not just in music, but in every industry, that are going to try and shoot you down. So, position yourself in a good place. I mean, one of my favourite memories of when we were much younger was when we did Fat Cat on a Saturday morning, and I asked Tom to put up this line, da, 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 da. It was on the top G, and says, just put it up triple G, and he did it without any sweat whatsoever, and it was just crazy. And like, that was when I knew, Tom, it was the personality, it was the character, it was I'll do this, I want to do this. And it's every sort of music, good sort of music, isn't it, man? And I don't know if you've got any sort of memories that you can share, what from those sort of days, or when you popped up the trumpet.
Massively. I mean, there was kind of like certain, like it really felt like I was a kind of rookie going into that. Certainly when I first met John in that ensemble that he's talking about, I really didn't know anything like theoretically or harmonically. So kind of a lot of the exercises that John he set me on the path to it. But it was it was amazing. I've always been inspired by people that have been in my peer group, I guess. So I remember there was a particular drummer called Richard Rayner in that group, and then some of my old pals that I ended up going to sixth form with. And it was just one of those things where you just, I think certainly I remember from kind of that early age, you being one of the first people that introduced me to Gordon Goodwin, which again, just kind of felt like the keys to the kingdom. This is music at the highest level,
Yeah, very cool. Do you feel like just playing a little thing on your trumpet, just 10 seconds or something? I know it's hot and...
I hope this doesn't distort. I mean, I'm going to have to try and... Yeah, we'll see. I'll try and play the...
Yeah.
How bad was that?
Without having warmed up or anything like that, because he's not played yet today, anybody. It's completely cold.
It's very warm in here.
It's very warm. I think that's absolutely amazing. So I'm sure you won't mind if any of the kids, reach out and say hi at some point in the future with intelligence.
Anytime, pass it on, yeah, of course, anytime.
It's what we do. It's that tradition. You pass it down, and what you give comes back, doesn't it? And I'd just like to say thanks very much. You've been a fantastic guest, and you are great. And if anybody's not heard Tom play in a section or in his band, Stu's just put a link in the chat group now. Go and check it out. It is unbelievable. And
just check out his YouTube channel. He's got loads of stuff on there. So
that's it.
Definitely
for today.
worth it.
I'd just like to say thanks to all of our guests. I'll ask Anna to send them through, and big love to Tom for everything that he's done today. Have a great week all. See you next week for Vox 5. Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
you.